it needs to use a real super chip that's harvested from games from the past that used them, like I think Pac-Man Jr., Desert Eagle, Desert Falcon, is that what it's called? I don't remember. There's a ton of them. There's about, I think there's 12 from the first wave of super chip games and a couple stragglers that use it that are common, popular, good games. But, you know, it ends up being to actually harvest the chips, which I have roughly a dozen of those chips. And I'm saving for final versions of the games. So I can make my own cartridge version of Yeet Fighter and have a label and stuff like that for myself, right? And right now I'm in talks with Kraz, the game company person that fronted my game up to Atari to be as a download. Again, right now it's available as a download if you want to buy it. It's a scant $5, which I'm charging $10 for the bin now, like I said. And but the bin you get to keep and put on a cartridge and play on real hardware and everything. And that's going straight to me, whereas I get a very small royalty from the download for the Atari, and that's trapped in the world of the online VCS only. Okay, so for that little bit you pay, you get a lot more because you'll be able to try the game on anything you want to try it on. Any computer emulator, any system with a multi-cart, and all of the multi-carts support Super Chip. Okay, and that is still for sale. So if you want Yeet Fighter, get a hold of me. I'm at jseedcaraway@hotmail.com. Get in touch with me. I will give you a PayPal account that you can send the money to. I get the $10. I email you back the bin file and an instruction text file. You don't get the beautiful artwork and stuff for your screen that will come with purchasing the VCS online system download. But if you spent $200 on a VCS, then you know you get that. Okay. But also, if you buy the game from me directly, then I can give you updates to the game in the future. So if you request them, or if for some reason I remember your name and a big list of people that have bought the game, I can send updates. And so if the game is made better, if there's problems, if someone finds out something is broken, I can try to fix it, and then I'll go ahead and give you that free of charge. So I'm making these games using only 32K bank switching chips that will work on regular old run-of-the-mill F4 compatible PCBs, which are cheap, easy to produce. I have dozens of them, and I have dozens of the chips, and hopefully can get more of the chips. A guy said, "Oh, I want to buy this game." And I said, okay, it might be a month or two before it's done, and it's going to be at least a month or two before this game's done. But the basic working parameters are set in place. Really, it's just adding more content and coding the interactions with the players before the game is ready to start being play tested. We have some crude beginnings of what will be play testing between me and my son in earlier videos, where we run the wrestlers into each other to cause them to bump heads and fall. We do body slams and suplexes. Those are the only program moves so far. But he mentioned a couple of wrestlers that he thought would be a good idea. He talked about the All Japan Pro Wrestling, which is incredible, like arguably the best wrestling. As far as technical wrestling and the spirit of wrestling goes, they've really got it. Like, there is nearly no soapiness to All Japan Pro Wrestling. It's treated like an arena combat event, and not you said something about my dog when we were at Walmart, and you broke the window in my car and stole my girlfriend, and when we get in the ring, I'm gonna pinch you so hard. Crap like that. It's not soap opera, BS like American pro wrestling has become. It's they get in the ring and then they beat the crap out of each other. And it's a lot harder, meaner, stiffer wrestling, but also you see a lot more skill from even, like, okay, here, just for an example, Hulk Hogan here was leg drop, punch, maybe a couple of high kicks now and again. He did some body slams, of course. You know, he was body slamming all over the place. He riled up the crowd. He'd do some chops, maybe a couple clotheslines now and again. He might toss you out of the ring. He'd maybe even do, you know, a couple of moves that, you know, aren't necessarily part of his, you know, common simplified persona. But when he goes to New Japan Pro Wrestling, he's doing snapmares and quick tripping stuff and claw moves and elbow strikes and stuff. He's got a whole bag of moves, and he's a much more technical wrestler than what you see in the United States of America. And that's pretty much, that's the modus operandi for All Japan Pro Wrestling. So he pointed out 2 All Japan Pro wrestlers that also competed here, that were widely regarded as stiff wrestlers, but also, like they said, one of them broke some guy's neck with his move, which was a lariat. Stan Henson, and he said, could you have him have a cowboy hat, a rope, and a cowbell, like what he would have, and a vest? And I'm thinking maybe something like that can be done. Like I can have a, possibly have a sprite that can go somewhere up there to add some extra components to the character. I'd like to be able to do that. So I'll see if I can do that. I'm not 100% sure if that's possible. But I'm not going to say right away that it's impossible. I have to just dig in there and see what I can do. But also suggested that character. Then he suggested if I wasn't going to do Stan Henson or maybe Van Vader or someone like that, maybe do Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, right? And I remember he was a great heel, popular bad guy, brawler, and he was a really good blend of brawler and technical, and he was a really snappy, smart wrestler. He had lots of comebacks and quips and stuff, and it was all about the money. That's it. It was all about the money. He'd come out with money in his hands and be like, grease palming the money in his hands in the ring. I think, was he the one that stuffed money in people's mouths if they lost? I think maybe that's what he did. Like, take like a couple of, dead presidents and shove them in your mouth after you lost. That might be someone else. I think it was him, though. I think it was the $1 Million Man that did that. All around great ideas. He also suggested possibly having classical color schemes for the rings, like the old black and yellow for WCW, I think is who did that. I've also seen it on NWA, or the red, white, and blues for WWF. And I don't know if that's even possible with the way that I'm doing the graphics here. Okay, that would be something that it might actually be out of reach for what I'm doing. I'm not sure. Now, changing ring colors, though, I know I can do that. Because the ring colors are just one color command, and then I can make them whatever. And finding a good color balance where the wrestlers look good and the ring color is different, sure. I know that I can do that. Now, for changing the color of the ropes, I'm using a single color that's based off of the ring alternate color. So that might actually be out of the question, is having individually colored ropes the way the system is set up right now. That doesn't mean that it can't be done with some more drastic changes. For instance, if I turn this into a super chip game, like the way that Yeet Fighter was, I could do more drastic differences in the background elements, and that's not something that's completely out of question. That would take a lot longer to do that, because I'd have to hit the brakes and rewind and go all the way back to a standard kernel programming method instead of this mirrored multisprite that I'm using. In the mirrored multisprite kernel, just some nerd facts here, the Y coordinates are reversed. So anywhere where I've programmed a Y coordinate for the wrestler to be on the screen, I'll have to find some opposite place for that to exist. Every bit of Y coordinate stuff will have to be changed. You can't adjust the height of missiles or the ball that's part of the background in the multi-sprite kernel, but you have 5 extra sprites on top of the 0 sprite. So you have 6 sprites total that you can work with. So that is a huge advantage to be able to have that much more graphics capabilities. And just for having to have mirrored playfields, it's really it's a great trade-off. Now, in other games, I have used Yeet Fighter's one of them. I've used the ability to control the width and height of missiles and background ball shapes to create the backgrounds and to add the punches and kicks of the characters. So when you look at a character kicking or punching in Yeet Fighter, the arm or the leg is actually a missile, which is part of that character's player graphics. Every player graphic is basically a 8 pixel wide to whatever pixel tall, and it comes with its own missile. And so because I'm layering 2 single colored 8 pixel wide, however pixel tall sprites over top of each other to have 3 colors created with this process, I also have 2 missiles that can be used for stuff. So I may be able to actually add something that looks like a hat to a character. Also, by changing the way the colors are, I might be able to add a vest or a shirt or possibly a rope or something that could look like a bell. I might even be able to add something that looks like money. That would be really, really cool. Now I am, right as I am now, I'm very close to being out of graphics space, but I have almost all of the graphics that are going to be in the game already in there. So I'm at that point where adding more graphics, I have to be really, really careful with it, but it's not impossible. You know, it's not something that's totally can't be done. It's actually a good idea. Try to have some little extra special things in there. Now I have 2 characters that are based off of Sid Vicious. There was Sid Vicious and Sid Justice, which were hero and heel characters that he was. And so I'm going to remove one of the Sid Vicious characters and replace him with one of those characters, either Stan Henson or Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. And I think Ted DiBiase might be the better idea. I don't know. I like Stan, and I also like having the, you know, less immediately recognizable characters. I'm, you know, I don't know how to put it really. I'm silly because I love NWA. Like, most people think NWA is just like crap, and it really isn't. It's like NWA is very close to my heart, and it does have some, you know, nostalgia fuel behind it. It's because when I was a kid, I seriously worshipped televised wrestling. I worshipped pro wrestling. I wanted to pro wrestle. I wrestled with my brother. I watched wrestling whenever it was on. I bought wrestling magazines, wrestling toys. It was part of my youth to the point where it was like, you know, some people are with, you know, baseball or football or something. I really adored wrestling. I got to meet the Ultimate Warrior in real life, and he was such a cool person. You know, he didn't say "F you, kid" or something like that. He was sitting down at a table and looked like a deity. He was so massive. I swear his arm was as big around as my whole body, right? He had these awesome boots on and stuff, and he looked so cool. And he signed a picture for me, and I have that picture. I think it got smushed somehow, but it's somewhere. It's a big picture that he was, you know, selling or handing out or whatever. And I saw live wrestling several times. Most of it was, you know, the lower stuff like CWA and NWA stuff. So, but I did see WWF live once. Coco Beware was there and a couple other ones, more popular TV ones. It was excellent. You know, it was incredible. I noticed, you know, I mean, WWF, you're sitting there and everything is perfect. Like the lighting is perfect, the colors are perfect, the wrestling is perfect. I'd even go as far to say it was almost too perfect, right? But at the CWA and the NWA stuff, you were like on the floor in a gymnasium and you were getting sweat flung on you, and you were looking up and there were like some fat chick's armpit in your face and people jumping around and screaming and stuff. You know, it was like so real that you were right there, and that was just it, you know. And so when I went home and I'd watch all the wrestling that was on TV, I always watched CWA, NWA, WCW, WWF, and as a kid, I liked NWA and sometimes CWA. I had, you know, mixed opinions about WWF and WCW. Like, I loved WCW, but I wasn't really mature enough to actually appreciate it for how good it really was. And so I might like WWF sometimes more than WCW, but I always loved NWA and the CWA, the stuff where, you know, it wasn't perfect camera work, it wasn't perfectly well lit, and it wasn't a massive crowd of screaming people everywhere and stuff, but it just, something about it magnetized me, and I just love that stuff. So I love NWA, and when I watch NWA wrestling, that was part of the inspiration. As my son said, he was into wrestling, and it had been years since I really got into it, but I did watch occasionally. I'd watch, you know, I'd watch WWE occasionally, and sometimes some of the other ones if they'd pop up. But it wasn't like I was as hardcore like I was when I was young. Then my son kind of wanted to watch it and get into it. I was like, okay, sure, I'm into that a little bit. Let's get into it. And so we started watching it again, and I just like, it just kind of all those feelings, you know, from when I was a kid. Nostalgia fuel, kind of, oh goodness. And then I started really, and you know, okay, when I watched WWE, I loved, you know, Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley, in my opinion, is one of, if not the best wrestlers in the whole entire world right now. Like, regardless of what place, what, you know, label, factioning, company, whatever, she is just power and awesome. Like, she is so awesome. It just blows my mind how amazing she is. And all the women wrestlers have really caught my attention now. There's so much more. Like, I remember watching Sensational Sherry. Was it Sherry Martel? And back when there was, you know, about a handful of women wrestlers at any given time. You know, it was after the Fabulous Moolah, but before, you know, the Raw and all that starting to work in more females into the fray. And today, I'd say the females are as good or better than the males, and it's like some of the best stuff ever that's even ever been out there. So after this game's finished, I'm totally planning on just, you know, redrawing every male in this game as a female and making a all-female version of this game. And ultimately, maybe if I can, with the right kind of twists and turns here and there, maybe fit both in a game somehow, somewhere, if that's even possible. But I definitely want a all-female wrestling game too. You know what I mean? And this is going to be the platform for that when it's done. You know, that's really great. And there just isn't enough of it in NWA. Like, there's only a handful of women wrestlers in NWA right now too, but they have great wrestlers, and they also have really great characters. Like, I like Tom Latimer. I thought he was great, and you know, I like all the female wrestlers that are there too. They're all really good, and it's a great show. And like, Billy Corgan bought it and took the whole thing over and kind of, you know, some people see it as I don't know. They don't like it for whatever reason, but I think it's great. And they teamed up with Roku, so now it's on my TV. Like, if at any time that I want to watch NWA, I can just turn on the TV and go find it and watch it. Commercial free, beginning to end. I can watch, as much of it that I want. I can watch it, all day long if I choose to. So that's really awesome that they did that. And of course, when you watch it, when it's being broadcast, there's some commercials and stuff popped in there. But then afterwards, it's available, digitally. You can watch any of the episodes and fast forward, rewind, and pause and all that stuff. And that's all there. I have a deep, profound love for wrestling from my youth. And I'm not the fan that I was then, by any stretch. But I do love it. And I think it's... I don't know, it's got a place in my heart. It'll always have a place in my heart. So yeah, I want this to be the best wrestling game ever for an Atari system. Like, straight up. That's my goal. That's what I'm trying to do here. There were some shortcomings to Yeet Fighter. I mean, as far as, it's not Street Fighter 2. It's not. But it's fast. And I had a lot of fun with it. My son loves it. I play it. I think it's a great game. I've beaten it, of course, I've beaten it, endless times because I programmed it. But it might be a little too hard for people. The controls are not, 100% perfect, but they are probably the best that you can get on an Atari 2600. The emulators people are running it on, sometimes it just doesn't look right. And that part, that might also be retained in this game. I'm running this with Phosphor at 77. I thought about calling my company Phosphor 77. That way I don't even have to tell you what to do for my games to look right. But these games are all tested on real hardware, and they look pretty much exactly like this on a television set. So that's what I'm working for. When you have an emulator that's from whoever from however on a Raspberry Pi or a Linux system or something, I have no idea if it will run a game at the same frame rate as a CRT and combine the graphics the way a CRT does. I can't guarantee my game's going to look right. So and that's how it was with this digital download with VCS. Is when it was produced, they had to put in the instructions, the first line, read the instructions, and right above it, set your game to, Phosphor 77. Because otherwise the graphics won't be blended properly. You'll end up with either a flashy mess or you'll end up with only one or the other frame that's not combined. So it's not a suggestion. It's something that must be done on those lower frame rate, less horsepower emulator driven systems. Now on something like a Dollar General Flashback, my games will not run. Okay, they might show up on the screen, but they are not going to look or perform the way they're supposed to, because these are programmed with real hardware and CRT televisions in mind. And it's a pretty eccentric programming method. I am not taking blocky single color backgrounds and single color sprites and just putting them up on the screen and doing something with it. That's easy, cute, and fun. Sometimes it's complex, but that's already been done. That's been beat to death. That's what everyone's doing. This is something no one's doing. And so it does break the rules a little bit. So, the phosphor effect is usually necessary. Now, this has the phosphor effect on. If I turn the phosphor effect off, it's my emulator, because it's on a work computer with a relatively good graphics card and a relatively fast processor. Okay, the only difference will be a slight bit of screen sync, almost a shimmer. I'll go ahead and show that. Okay, this is with Phosphor 77 on. I'm going to go ahead and exit, go to my options, go to my game properties, and I'm going to turn off Phosphor. And there you go. Now, I don't know if the camera is picking it up, but I can see that the screen has a bit of a shimmer. Now that's something that a television you either won't see or can be easily tuned out with minor adjustments to brightness or contrast. And I say that in the instructions, that you may need to adjust the brightness or contrast of your television to get a clean picture or to get a good image, stuff like that. And you know what Capcom game made in 2019 doesn't say that. You know, they have you go through an entire, Scantron scratch-off setting up the game. Move the slider until this image is barely visible. Move the slider until this image disappears. Move the slider until this image is barely visible. You have to do that just to get the brightness to work for your screen, because there's so much variety out there, so many different types of TVs, and so many conditions that you could be playing your game in. So this isn't something that is, crappy Atari games from 70s and 80s that you have to do. This is something you have to do today when you buy a brand new game from Steam on your high-end gaming PC, okay? So don't come at me with, I refuse to adjust my brightness or my contrast. If you're playing it on a CRT and it's flashing, turn down your brightness or turn up your contrast, see if it eliminates that flickering, shimmering, flashing effect. You'll see that not only will you see that the Atari game looks perfect the way it's supposed to, but try that setting with a Sega Genesis game and see if it doesn't look 10 times better after you make that tweak. Because usually it does. So okay, that's with the Phosphor 77. And on that note, the way this is set up right here, there is no shimmering or flashing on my CRT televisions. So they look great the way this game is right now. Okay, now, he wanted me to go through the roster of wrestlers. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and activate the Versus Wrestler. On the left we have Jeff Hartley, who is based off of Jeff Hardy, who usually came into the ring with a vest or a top or a shirt. He had face piercings and spray painted green hair and stuff like that. So I'm going to change the way he looks to better fit that if I can. Actually, I think he had blue hair. But this is the basic setup. I may change the character. Again, this is all still floating. This is all still vaporous stuff right now. Nothing is absolutely solidified in concrete at all. None of it is. Okay. And the other guy is Cat Mardona. That's Matt Cardona. Matt Cardona's been in the NWA. I think he's also been in WCW, maybe even a stint in WWE. I'm not 100% sure of all the places that he's been or what he's done, but he is a really great physical wrestler. He's kind of a cocky, heelish, I don't know, he's like, he could be a baby face, but he's usually a heel, and he's really cocky, but he's also kind of cut and ripped and strong and really athletic, and he's just a great wrestler. I like him. I like Matt Cardona. So on the right, we've got Cat Mardona, and he's got the look. Okay, now actually as I'm looking at them both, I might be able to tweak this guy and have him be Cat Mardona, and then tweak this guy's hair and have him be Matt Hardy. Okay. Now we've got let's see where I'm at here. Okay. Now we have John Cena and Rude Kiss. Okay, now Rude Kiss on the right has a lip caterpillar. He's kind of pale. Some of these colors still need to be adjusted. Okay, I forgot to mention that, but I have recently done adjustments to the background, but I haven't went and retweaked the colors for the characters because the background colors affect the way the sprites look in this game. So it's a balancing act the entire time. I can't just go, give me a blue sprite, it gives me a blue sprite. If I've got a red screen and I put a blue sprite up there, it might turn the character purple. Okay, so I have to be It's a balancing act. The entire thing is to try to get the colors to be the way that they are now. Okay, so we've got Rude Kiss. He's based on Ravishing Rick Rude, who was, in my time when I was a little kid watching this stuff, he would bring a supposedly rando chick out of the audience and just like tonsil tongue force, nasty kiss her right in front of everybody, and it supposedly would like knock her unconscious. I think sometimes he would like lower them down to the mat like they couldn't even, like this was like a paralysis, Snow White, debilitating kiss. It was proving that he was like deific with his lips and his lip caterpillar, okay? But his name was Ravishing Rick Rude, and he would kiss women as his gimmick before fighting the match. So he's called Rude Kiss, okay? I might change that. John Cena, I don't remember who that guy's based off of, okay? So whatever. You guys might know who John Cena would be based off of, but you tell me if you know who he's based off of. I was thinking of naming him Chaos Maker. Maybe that'd be a good name for him. I don't know. Let's move on to the next one. Okay. All right. Make sure I'm doing this right. Yes, okay. Now we've got, oh goodness gracious. Carson Dukes, that's based on Carson Drake. Okay? I might change that though. I might change the last name so that it's more of a duck thing and less of a mispronunciation of Dukes thing, because people may not have any idea what that connection is. But his name's Carson, and I don't know how many wrestlers are named Carson. Okay? He's from the NWA. He was in a match that was in my, right now, top 10 favorite matches. It wasn't a great match, but the way the match ended, okay? He was wrestling, and the manager wanted his guy to win, and so he called Carson over to the edge of the ring, and he whispered in his ear and then showed him some money or something. And then Carson's like, oh, nodding, okay. And then he just plainly, obviously throws the match right there in front of the camera in the funnest way possible, and then the other guy wins. And it is the first time I've ever seen that happen in pro wrestling, and it was totally awesome and funny and fitting all at the same time. I love Carson Drake. He's one of my favorites right now, as far as, and he's just a gem for the NWA. He is, and he's cocky. He does a little dance that's his gimmick, and he's just, he's an adorable heel. And I think that's kind of a mode that they've got now. They've got grungy, drunky-looking good guys, and they got baby-face bad guys. Like, that's the new thing. You're a baby-face, but you're a rotten bad guy. Or you kind of look scuffed up and scratched up and gnarly, but you're a good guy. And why not? Run with it, That's great. It's forever. It's been gnarly guys heel, cute guy baby-face, right? Gerbil face, whatever you want to call him. So it's great. Bob Atomic, what is he? Oh my God. I wrote it down somewhere, but, I think it's Atomic Bomb. There's a guy whose nickname was Atomic Bomb, and he's from classic wrestling. Super tough guy, brawler, finger eater, one of those guys. Okay. We've got, oh boy, Dark Sid. That's Sid Vicious is Dark Sid. And he's green like the Incredible Hulk. Okay, that's crazy. I'm going to have to change that. Then we've got Zap Knight. I think he's from Black Knight or something. There's a guy that was a classic. And he had another character name that was like something Zap. I don't know, this is messing with my head. Okay, I wrote all this stuff down. All right. Help me out if you know. Okay. Okay, now we've got Amos Irish. Okay. Now I'm thinking of changing Amos Irish to Amos Shea. Okay, because then it would be Pig Latin of Seamus. Amos Shea is Seamus in Pig Latin. And then Irish is cool and everything, but I think Amos Shea would be funnier, and it would be undeniably Seamus and sound less like anus. Okay. But then we have Sky Warrior. That's from the Dingo Kid. And I think he had Sky in there somewhere, and Ultimate Warrior. And what I've done is, to make my life slightly easier, but also to capture an amalgamation of both of his forms, he has short hair, but he has the eye mask makeup from the later movies. Now, he was teamed up with Sting. Sting stayed in WCW. They both kept the makeup gig. They were basically stiff bodybuilders that were fueling their lifestyle with wrestling, and so the other wrestlers didn't like him very much. But then Sting had like more technical skill and more actor presence, and so he was really, really popular. And even though the Ultimate Warrior got like arguably, god tier status, as far as the wrestlers were concerned, they would probably all agree that Sting was a great wrestler and was a good guy, and that the Ultimate Warrior was an evil monster in real life, and that he was not a good wrestler. That he was actually... I even heard him in an interview once say that, he was basically going out there and he'd say, he'd grab him by the throat and by the balls. And then other people would say in their interviews that he would grab you by the balls. And one guy would say, I told him before the match, if you grab me by the balls, I'm going to knock you the F out, right? Stuff like that. So the Ultimate Warrior was very stiff. Like, he would bounce your head off the mat. He would actually gorilla press you by grabbing your throat and your testicles, and then drop you what must have been roughly 9 feet off the ground, straight down on yourself, okay? And that's not playing around here. This guy was stiff. But Sting was the opposite. He was selling it every night. He was extremely gifted and talented, and he was technical and beloved. And so I would say I'm not there. I'm not there, and I don't know. Maybe that's the exact opposite, and it's just the words that I'm getting from the magic mirror. I don't know. But I can say that collectively what I've heard from the internet, from interviews and everything, is that the Ultimate Warrior was actually not a very good wrestler, and that Sting ended up actually being like an incredible wrestler with good acting talent and everything. The Ultimate Warrior was in it for the money. Sting actually grew a heart and became a wrestler instead of a bodybuilder. But Ultimate Warrior was always a bodybuilder at heart. Everything was about mass, competition. Hellwig was his name. And they said he was racist. He was only in it for money. That there's stories of him like giving the F word to little kids who came up to him in airports, talking racist remarks about people. And that just being an exclusivist, kind of isolated super asshole. But I don't know if any of that is true. He might have handed out free bunnies to kids on Easter. I have absolutely no idea how much of any of that is true, but he did super accelerate to stardom. They also said that his body was strong, but his heart was weak, and that by the time he got to the ring, because he would run like an insane person, he would be so winded and exhausted that he could barely even wrestle. So I heard that a lot too. And now that I look back at his matches, he was huffing like a freaking locomotive. He would get down there, and then I'm an asthmatic. Okay, so I know what it looks like and feels like to be absolutely, struggling to get oxygen into your body. And he looked like that. He looked like he was breathing like a gorilla about to howl kind of in the jungle somewhere. He did not look like he had endless energy and that everything was okay. And if all of a sudden he changed his entrance to walking idly to the ring to conserve his energy, that would be a lot less Ultimate Warrior and a lot more, I don't want my heart to explode. You know, so he gave it his all, but his all was more bodybuilder stiffness than actual wrestling. And he became, you know, deific because of his style. So, you know, that I think it's amazing how wrestling can be like that. There can be people who are just, you know, I don't know, they're cut like a pineapple grenade, right? And they come in there and they're just so amazing looking. And when you watch them from the television set, you're just losing it over what you're seeing. But then from their end, there's a guy that's like, he ripped both my testicles out and he choked me, and then he called me an N-word, and then he refuses to talk to anyone. Stuff like that. Like you never see the other end of it, right? You never see the cameraman, you don't see the director, you don't see the people behind the movie. You watch the movie and you love the character, and then everybody tells you, oh my God, I hated that guy because of this and that and the other, right? And so the Ultimate Warrior has a place in my heart, but less now than he did before. You know, I remember him dying. I remember when he came out, was inducted, yelled, and there was like this yell and like a little faint kind of painful, wretched gasp at the end of his yell. And I really think that that little gasp at the end of his yell was that Ultimate Warrior character actually dying. And then like the next day he died. Or like that night he died. He went in the ring, award, screamed, left, died. Straight up. Like his heart was not able to hold on. And that's what happens when you roid yourself to death. Is that your body, your outer shell muscular body, gets completely freaking gigantic, and your rage goes off, and your manhood shrinks while your muscles grow super huge, and then your heart can't even keep up because you're not cardio your heart to where it can actually control it. It's I guess to go along with the earlier locomotive motif, it's like a locomotive is made to run with coal, and then steroids is like fueling your locomotive off of a tank full of rocket fuel. And then what's going to happen? The locomotive's going to run really fast briefly, and then it's going to explode. And that's what he did to himself. All right. Okay, now we got Cyrus Kid. Okay. And Ron Farouk. Now, Ron Farouk's very close to who he is. He's Ron Farouk. Okay, that's who he's based as, an African-American wrestler, highly skilled. I think he's an ex-NFL, if I'm not mistaken, and was a really great wrestler. I think he was well known for being a great wrestler. Let's see here. What about Cyrus Kid? Oh, goodness. Who was that? It's been a couple of weeks now since I've gone through this, and I honestly don't remember. Cyrus Kid. I know the guy had Kid in his name somewhere. He's from the older stuff. Okay, now we've got Chef Stone. That's based off of The Rock. Okay, Stone is a rock. Chef is cooking. So can you smell what The Rock is cooking? Chef Stone. Okay, that's who he's based on. And he kind of looks a little bit like him. Okay, there he is. And then we've got U.S. Python. Of course, this is mean, terrible Terry. It's Terry Gene Bollea, one of the greatest wrestlers ever, for persona, for magnetism, for selling it, but also for stiffing it, for bringing everyone's attention. It was our, giant versus the strongman, right? Like it was like he body slammed the giant. Which, people pointed out that in the earlier years when Andre the Giant had long curly hair and was a little more slender, but still massive, a true giant, he was getting body slammed by people. It wasn't like, but then in the WWF, that was little kids watching cartoons, eating breakfast cereal, buying toys, and it was slime and wall crawlers and floating toucan Fruit Loops and wearing your, sitting on your floor in your underwear watching wrestling. They knew that's who this was pointed at. So, it was brilliant marketing and story angling to have that. Now in the 80s, there was a lot more Cold War stereotypes. So the Chinese guy is a bad guy, the Russian guy is a bad guy, the USA guy is a good guy, the Irish guy is chaotic, bad and good, because he sawed off, or the Scottish guy, Roddy Piper. They all had like regional stereotypes that defined their persona, and that was to make it simple, but it was also to have that fuel for all of the soapy storylines that were going to be born from it. So, like today, it's obviously intergender affairs. It's like more soap opera than it ever was before. It's like cheating, lying to each other, broken hearts, backstabbing. It really is like as the world turns wrestling more than it ever was before. And then in the 70s and the 60s and then way back into, whatever, dudes you never heard of in a town you never saw beating each other up for a couple kegs of beer or something, it has changed so much. It just has changed so much. It's gone, way off the deep end with the stories. The stories are so huge now, and it's so ridiculous. I agree with him that feel of All Japan Pro Wrestling definitely needs to be here. The lack of soap and way more just, you think you can handle me, but you can't. Let's face in the ring. The other guy, oh, you think you're going to win? I don't think you're going to win. Let's butt heads. And then they're in the ring and they're fighting, and that's what you're there for. It's not going to be, you said my dog was ugly and I caught you with my sister, and the other guy's like, oh yeah, well, your mom is actually my mom, you're secretly my brother, and it's like soap opera stuff where they're staring at each other lovingly but also kind of angrily for like 20 minutes and then they embrace. Like, I don't just, come on, like, that is what's happened to wrestling. This is not that. This is, I'd say it focuses on the 80s, but it tries to incorporate some of the modern personalities and the pre-80s personalities mixed in there. Okay, so Hulk Hogan, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is an accomplished actor now. He's a Oscar-nominated actor. Why is this not? There we go. Okay. Make sure this is the right next one. Okay, we've got MT Overgiver. That's the Overgiver is the Undertaker. Okay. Catch Wyvern. That's Steamboat Dragon. Okay, so it's the Dragon Steamboat. Okay. Bruiser Brody on the right, King Bruiser. And we've got Kurt Perfect, that's Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig. Two excellent wrestlers that are galactically, profoundly polar opposites of each other. Bruiser had scars on his forehead, would like bite, and pull and tug, and he got nasty, mean, dirty all the time. Well known for it. Kurt Perfect was a technical wrestling master. Kurt Hennig was like, he really was one of the best wrestlers that you ever saw. Like, as far as he made professional wrestling look like evolved competitive wrestling. There's only a few people out there that were really like that. the Hart Foundation, they did that. You know what I mean? Like, not so much Owen Hart, but definitely Bret Hart made pro wrestling look like an evolved form of competitive wrestling, right? Like they have that, and that was Kurt Hennig all the time in dollops. He was magnificent, bad guy, but also just like as good as they get. Really, he was really like that. So was Bret Hart. I feel sorry sometimes for Bret Hart. I think his career was ended by Goldberg. Goldberg, like, ox kicked him in the eye socket and just shut everything down. He was, like, multiple concussed, was out. He was out after that point because he was ruined by that moment. And they said Goldberg was not a wrestler. Like, he was just a brute. He would run into you full force like he's tackling someone on a football field. He would actually kick you full force like someone kicking somebody in real life. He was there hurting people. And I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong about this, but I think he actually agreed to do what he did contractually, that he would not lose until, after a certain number of wins. Like, so he would be like the most winning televised pro wrestler of all time or something like that. And we loved it. We loved, again, for the same stupefying reasons that people loved The Ultimate Warrior, we didn't know what we were watching was bad pro wrestling. We just thought this was some amazing warrior persona. Like, he would stand in the smoke and breathe in the smoke from the pyrotechnics, and then when the flames came down, he would blow pyrotechnic smoke out of his nose. It was it. That was it. That was it. That was amazing. Just that alone was like out of your mind. That was amazing. He would come to the ring, super sharp, total warrior mode, chiseled, physical, awesome. But then he'd do a torpedo dive at you, and he would do lots of power moves and stuff. He was all power, just raw power, no matter what. But then you find out hindsight, he was just straight up beating the shit out of people in the ring and hurting them. It wasn't wrestling. It was Goldberg is beating the shit out of you in the ring. That's what's happening tonight. And that's not good. That's not good. It would be like, I don't know, kind of like if some actor is shooting up in a movie and they're like, oh no, that was actual real heroin. He's shooting up and he's actually passed out high on heroin. In that scene right there, here's some heroin. Also the director and everyone else was on heroin. That's not a movie. That's people actually doing that. That's how this was. That wasn't him like doing some, shoulder dive, that's controlled where the guy knows how to take it. He is knocking you down and hurting you with this. And he pulled this with Bret Hart. Bret Hart's coming off the ropes. He does full power back kick to the face, rear facing back kick straight in his face, completely shattered and collapsed his eye socket and concussed his brain, knocked him for a loop and ruined his career, shut his career down. One of the greatest technical wrestlers of all time, Bret Hart, was completely ruined by a man who is not a professional wrestler. He's just like, he was like a football legend or something like that. Whatever. Okay, Fang Crow, that's Sting. He's got a little bit of makeup, dark makeup. Then we've got, of course, one and only greatest wrestler that ever lived of all time, the Nature Boy, Flair Rickman. Okay? If you don't know who Flair Rickman is, you haven't watched. Okay. Now, I didn't used to think he was the greatest of all time, but I've grown up. I'm almost 50. I've watched a lot more of the stuff from the past. I know a lot more about what's going on. I know what it means when they sell it. I know what it means when they're doing their very best. No one even comes close, honestly. I really, truly believe that Ric Flair is number one. He really is. Now, personal life, son, drunk on a plane, I don't know about any of that stuff. I'm not going to hate him because that's not him. I'm talking about Ric Flair, the wrestler in the ring. And as far as the person in real life and the wrestler in the ring, they say no one was closer to being nearly the same person in both settings, okay? But I'll just say that when I'm judging someone based on their wrestling and their contribution and their status and the way it all functions, no one was like Ric Flair. It's just like Hulk Hogan was extremely important, but he was more colorful and animated and actor kind of oriented, whereas Ric Flair was more like a real, just pro wrestler all the way. He was of the wrestler, by the wrestler, for the wrestler, pro wrestling, right? So that's how I feel about it. I'm not expecting everybody to feel about that. Everybody's going to say, oh, you're full of crap, whatever, you don't know anything. It was fill in the blanks. Bruiser Brody, a lot of people are going to get that one. A lot of people are going to have their own opinions. They might say The Rock, okay, a lot of people say Hulk Hogan. Undertaker, shoot, Undertaker's way up there, right? I like The Undertaker, that's cool. Don't get me wrong. Okay, make sure we're lined up here. Okay, Bryan Adams is Adam Bryans, okay, and Rey Hysteria, who is like Rey Mysterio. Okay, Rey Mysterio is a Mexican flyer. His son has a mustache ride, broke up with Goddess, and that's the soap going on right now. Okay, he helped solidify the Mexican wrestling presence in American televised pro wrestling. So, you know, we need the luchadors and the more flying, flipping, gliding, carnivalesque, skill-oriented aspects of wrestling. Less brawler, bruiser, less like technical, born from the ground up competitive wrestling aspects, more like I don't know, almost Incan and Mayan kind of costumed bird warrior kind of presence, you know, like they're flying, they're all flyers, they're all flipping, they got their own style, and it's really awesome. And it uses the ring, uses the surroundings, just some of the best stuff you ever saw in the ring. So yeah, Rey Hysteria has to be in there. Rey Mysterio needs to be in. That's my opinion. Okay, Vic Psycho, that's going to be Psycho Sid. Tom Grimes, that's going to be Tom Latimer. Most of you don't even know who Tom Latimer is, but Tom Latimer just had the NWA title. Took it to Maple, and he had some of the best stuff around in Canada defending the NWA. And we already know. Most of us we're not stupid, okay? If the current NWA World Champion goes to Canadian Pro Wrestling, you're not going to see the title change. It doesn't matter. It really was. It was that good. It didn't matter. He is that good. Now, everyone talks about checkered past and stuff, and they said he's fought with his demons, right? He's had his demons. Whatever it was. Divorce, alcoholism, whatever. I don't know about any of that crap. All I know is Tom Latimer is boss AF, okay? Straight up incredible. Great physique, great wrestling, great presence, a really great look. Now we're back to the beginning. So we got Jeff Hartley in. I'm pretty sure that was 24 wrestlers in total. It should have been 12 changes, one on each side. I'm going to count my fingers and other stuff. 24 wrestlers. Okay, so any ideas? I'm open. I can't do a lot more than what I'm doing, but I can change names, I can change colors, I can change appearances to a degree. I'm willing to accept, changing the ring colors. I might be able to add some little things here and there, nuances and stuff. There's a couple places I'm not going to go with this, and it's not to offend anybody, but I'm not going to make this bloody wrestling. I don't want people to be disgusted by it, and it's also something that I may not be able to do technically. Like, I might not be able to have bloody stuff happening in this video game. Okay, maybe I can. Maybe I would do something like that. I don't want to, because, you know, that wasn't really the goal here. The goal is to have the best wrestling game on a 2600. The only competition right now, you know, it's not going to be hard to do that with the 2 wrestling games that are out for the Atari, both of them sucking as bad as they do. But, okay, so now we got the wrestlers. Let's see if we can get in the ring. Alright. I like how it looks. It does have some room for improvement. I'm probably going to leave the ref the way he is. He's kind of cartoony and little, but I don't know, I might not. It's not going to hurt the game at all to make him, you know, slightly longer legs and, you know, a little bit taller. But, here I'm in an emulator. This is called a Legends Flashback. It's a little pod that uses an SD card. Now this has been firmware updated. Of course, you know, the brilliant nerds out there of the world, like me, found out that the internals are nearly the same as some other drive that people are using. I don't know if it was a Pico emulator, something. Some other emulator system is nearly identical to this one. So they used the emulation for that and then came up with this way to fit a ton more stuff on this Legends Flashback. Now originally Legends Flashback, now this does have a point. Originally this Legends Flashback just had games from systems, but then it you know, on the list to play. But what this firmware update does is let you have systems themselves to go into in the same way that you would go into these other games. So originally it had like these games, like Burger Time, Dig Dug Alley. If you click on the game, it has you know, what buttons to press and a little bit about it. As Chef Peter Pepper, you must fend off the food foes while making perfect burgers. Says stuff about the game, has a little bit bigger picture. Now, all of the flashback systems use basically the same setup. They have an all games menu within the folder where the ROMs are, and you can type in and add your own games. They also make programs that will inject the games in the artwork for you, so you don't have to open a text editor or figure out how to do this yourself, but I just do it myself. And so you can go in and edit them, okay? This system is actually surprisingly powerful for being a cheap Dollar General toy. Now I'm using a real Sega 6-button pad, but it actually comes with a kind of a knockoff that's not that bad. I've actually used worse 6-button pad knockoffs than what came with this system. What came with the system is lightweight, lighter weight, cheaper construction, but it's the basic 6-button pad, and of course it you can access the menu, and that's important. So the mode button is the menu button on these older 6-button pads. Now with this updated firmware, we have all these different systems here, and what they did was put their own personal selection of for these systems. But of course, I'm going to go in and add a ton of my own things, and you know, more recent things that have come out since the system has been released. So you want, like for instance, on the Master System, someone has hacked it and modified the graphics so that the main character, rather than being like a horn helmet wearing Viking-esque kind of warrior, Golden Axe warrior, which is a Zelda clone. It's better graphics than Zelda, and it's a very, very expensive, sought-after game. They changed it to look like a variation of Link from The Legend of Zelda, and it makes it look really, really good. And it's still almost the same game, but there are graphical changes. So it's a lot of fun to play. Sega Genesis, there's been just a massive wave of Sega Genesis Homebrew and old things that were never released being polished up and released. Lots of hacks and edits and graphical alterations and anything, you know, and everything is coming out for these systems. A lot of Nintendo games that were Famicom games that could never make it past the censors, would have been too expensive or too much, take too much time or cost too much to translate and to edit out all of the stuff that could never make it past the censors. Those games have recently been translated and then brought to download sites and stuff. So like Shin Megami Tensei, any game that's got demon, devil, crosses, cussing, nudity, blood, or anything, you know, super Japan centric or Eastern world centric, likely didn't make it through the comb getting over to our country back then. So now a lot of those, and they are good games, they're really, really great games, have come over. Some Super Nintendo games have also been translated or modified. So there's just a massive amount. There's a massive amount of them. For instance, because the MSX is a Z80 and the Master System's a Z80, someone came out with a MSX cartridge that has 3 games on it that you can choose from that were from the original MSX that will easily work on the Master System. Now, this brings in the SG-1000, which the Japanese Master System and the Mark III are already backwards compatible with. And of course, with your Sega Genesis, under certain conditions, you can get an SG-1000 ROM to play if you're using a, you know, like a Mega EverDrive or one of these, you know, SD card multi-cards. Okay, which I have. I have that for the Genesis and the PC Engine. My game on these systems, though, usually won't play properly. Like, it just won't look right because it requires a CRT or it requires the phosphor settings to be changed to blend the frames more accurately. Now on my 2018 flashback, which is the best Sega emulation for the money, it's not FPGA, but it does run incredibly well. It has precise sound, beautiful, and it's HDMI out the box. Good controllers, looks like a medium-sized Model 1 Sega Genesis. Now it's the one with the square reset button. They came out with an oval-shaped reset button originally, and that one had notoriously terrible emulation and people rejected it. It was a terrible system. So they went in and sped it up, enhanced the emulation and everything, and people loved that one. So, you know, if you're going to get an at-game Sega Genesis, the one that actually looks like a medium-sized Sega Genesis, not a mini, not a full-size Model 1, make sure to get the one with the square reset button. That'll give it away that it is the one that emulates properly. Okay, so I made this list. Now on my Legends flashback, I opted for the 32X compatibility. So what you then can do is play Genesis, Mega Drive, Master System, 32X game. But on my At Games 2018 Sega Genesis, I opted for the Sega CD compatibility. So you add your game, and then you can put little messages up here. So we got this one that I've been playing, Life on Earth. This game's amazing. Now what I found out today, in case you haven't played Life on Earth, you should go and get it and play it, because it is amazing. But what I found out today is that it's actually based off of and has most of its assets from an MSX2 game that was like, you know, when they made the MSX, they really cranked it up gradually. At first, it was really a slow, lacking system with no scrolling. You know, it was okay. It wasn't great, but then they made the MSX2, and they had all kinds of upgrades for that system. So that game is actually made for a maxed out MSX2, like an MSX2 Plus with some RAM card or some kind of extra cartridges or something to make it run better. And then it has incredible graphics and scrolling, and you always can tell an MSX from an MSX2 because an MSX game like Gradius will scroll in little chunks, really choppy, chunky scrolling, whereas an MSX2 will scroll relatively smoothly and have a lot more color. This will record a save if the game had the capability of having a save through a battery in its original form. So you can do all kinds of stuff like that. Now arcade games, you can't do that, but the arcade games do have unlimited tokens, and now I've noticed that whatever is needed to run you know, really good arcade emulation is kind of missing from this. So in the arcade category, someone has gotten like late 70s, early 80s arcade games, and a lot of them just don't work. And of course that's because the updated firmware and all the emulators that come with it are from a separate system that's nearly identical to the internals of this system. Not identical. And so most things work, but a couple, like a handful of things don't, and it's usually in that realm of arcade only. So Nintendo pretty much always runs. Now I have found a couple of things that won't run for whatever reason. For instance, and there are problems. There are problems with this update. Someone did like a Chinese hack of some role-playing game and like turned it into Chrono Trigger, and that won't run. Even though that will run on my PC emulators, it will run on some of my other emulators. And a lot of it's because of when they make these games, they make custom mappers, which are in software because they're using emulators and, you know, like software development kits to make these games to hack and edit. Older emulators, you could easily hack the graphics on Nintendo games. Like a DOS Nintendo emulator, like Nesticle or something, will allow you to open the graphics plane that's being stored to display readily and edit it in real time and save the ROM after it's been edited. Okay, so as far as simple graphic edits, those earlier emulators, regardless of whether they play perfectly or support every mapper ever made, can easily be graphically edited. When you go in and start actually reprogramming parts of the game to be totally different, that's when you're getting into the realm of assembly code and changing large, sophisticated, difficult parts of code that require extensive knowledge. A lot has been done. Like there's been I think it's Ninja Gaiden, but it's been completely redrawn and recrafted into a Deadpool game. And they've changed the code of the game, so there's actually a practice like tutorial session. The game is different, but it's Ninja Gaiden with Deadpool instead of whatever, Ryu Hayabusa. What I've been doing lately is remaking these menus, adding games that weren't there before. Also doing the same with my 2018, I've been adding games to that, and I've been playing a specific game that is, it's something truly magnificent. It's called Pierce Solar. Now, it did have like a homebrew kind of side company release, a company called Watermelon, with a capital M for melon. Watermelon made this game, and it was about to be released for the Genesis in the last legs of the system, so it never actually got released. Members of the team started reworking it and finishing it in the 2000s, the early 2000s. By 2007 or so, they had a stable working game, and it was already very close to being completed. Another team came in and helped them finish it around, I think, 2008. They had a demo. My dates might be wrong here, but I'm going from memory. And then in 2010, they actually released the game. Now, what it would have been is an 8 megabyte cartridge. To put that into perspective, the largest games that you ever saw for the Sega Genesis at the time were 4 megabyte, and those were massive video games. So usually a game is 256K, 512K. Those are your entry level games. Some 1 megabyte games were gigantic back in the day. A 2 megabyte game was massive. A 4 megabyte game was like futuristic, mind blowing kind of stuff. So having an 8 megabyte game, which is 64 megabits, was god tier kind of stuff. So they finished the game. Now to add some icing to the cake, right? They made it so that a music CD that's data tracks. It's not a CD. It's not like a music CD you can play in your car, but a data track of a music CD could be added to it if you had a Sega CD. And it would allow you to choose the CD in a menu for that music instead of the cartridge music, even though the cartridge music is incredible. Like, it has some of the best drums and overall some of the best music I've ever heard on a Sega Genesis. It is top tier, some of the best video game music I've ever heard. So Pierce Solar is a role-playing game. If it would have come out, it really seriously would have been standing toe-to-toe with Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy 2 and 3 and games like that. It is truly that good of a video game. They've introduced a couple of new things in the game that are not normally in role-playing games. So every role-playing game has to have a gimmick, right? And sometimes the gimmicks are kind of crap. If you think about what I like about role-playing games, is that it brings life to something that is static. So you're sitting around a table with some dice and a book, and everybody's got their little sheet. I used to play with my kids, and I made a role-playing game called Toy War. And it was rules that were kind of like simplified Dungeons and Dragons rules, where you could take any toy that you had and give it role-playing game statistics to use in a game. And then we had this massive plastic hex map that had like terrain graphics on it. And we'd set it on the floor, and then we'd have our own toys, and we'd have statistics for the toys and sit and play. Well, that was fun because toy in your mind has extra kind of feeling of being alive and having motion and stuff. It's one step better than a miniature or something. But when you're playing a role-playing game, some people don't care. They'll just play it and they like it. They'll read the text, they'll play the game. And if it's one image of a bad guy that pops up on the screen, and then it says that you hit them or they hit you or you defended or used magic, that none of that matters. They're happy. I'm not like that, though. I want to see animated interaction. That's what I don't like about the original Phantasy Star game. It's an excellent game. The story's good and everything, but most of the interactions are nearly static. It's really like some kind of Pokemon card game or something. The graphic just pops up. There's little or no animation. You never see your character interacting, and then it says, "Oh, you took 2 damage. The monster is defeated." Then the monster disappears. That's cute and everything. Most people like it, and it's okay. Then Phantasy Star 2, you actually see your character standing there. Then your character is attacking the enemy, and the enemy is responding like they got attacked. The enemy is attacking with, a couple frames of animation. That's what I like. That's where I'm at with it. Then we have Final Fantasy. You got your side view, and your characters are all lined up, and they move over and attack the enemy, and then go back to their little ranks, and then the enemy can do an attack. The magic has visible animations. Sometimes you see effects on the characters, like being stunned or asleep or poisoned or knocked down unconscious or dead or whatever. That's how a video game, role-playing game should be, in my opinion. It should have as much extra animation and details and stuff as possible. I don't like games like where it's just a static image of an enemy appearing. Well, Pier Solar is more like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy, and that is a side view. Your characters are on the right side, enemies on the left side, and then you're planning what to do. Where it's different, where it truncates and becomes special, and what its gimmick is in its defense mode, where and this is so cool, I absolutely love what they did with this game, because it really sets it apart. It's excellent. I mean, I'm not going to say I play every role-playing game that ever came out, but I have played many role-playing games, and I know which ones I like. I know why I like them. I've beaten Phantasy Star Online, the story mode of it. I've played through lots of games, Final Fantasy games and stuff like that. Final Fantasy VII, I've beaten Final Fantasy VII. So I'm into role-playing games, but I have to be held by something that keeps my interest in the game. And one thing that will make me give up on a game, regardless of how interesting the story is just these like static image pop-up encounters where it's just an image with no animation, and then it goes, oh, he did damage and you died, or you hit him and it did damage, and that's all. I can do that. I can do more than that, really, with a piece of paper and a miniature. Because I can see all angles of the miniature, and it's moving around on a map or something, so I can get an imagination kind of feel. In my mind, I can imagine what's going on. So in my opinion, a role-playing game where a static image of an enemy appears, right? That's not as good as miniatures of the bad guys and your character and a nice-looking terrain or map sitting on a kitchen table with some dice and stuff. But then if you have a video game where your character is running at the bad guy and they jump and hack him with the sword animation, and then the sword changes based on what you have, or your armor changes appearance based on what armor you have, or the enemy has 3 or 4 different attacks, or it like has an animation response to being damaged or dying. That's what a video game, role-playing game should be. Okay, and Pier Solar does that big time. Like, it's just jam-packed with it. But then the defense mode is incredible. In a role-playing game, your time to attack happens, you click attack, and then your character does the animation to attack, and it hits the enemy. You usually only get 1 attack. Maybe you have a drink that gives you 2 attacks, or maybe you have two weapons so that you can get 2 attacks. It depends on what role-playing game you're playing. But for the most part, you say attack, you get 1 attack, and you hit or you miss, you do your damage. But in Pier Solar, they did something very interesting, okay? In this game, they made it so that if you're smart and paying attention to how the enemy is behaving, you'll know when to defend, right? So I'll put a scenario out there. There are flying enemies. You can't hit flying enemies if you're a sword-swinging fighter. But if you're an archer, you can hit flying enemies, and you can hit flying enemies with magic. But if you want to take a whole group of flying enemies out, you'll pay attention to their behavior. So I noticed that if my archer shoots one of the flying enemies, then there's a very high probability, almost 80% or more, that they'll all swarm down and start attacking the archer in sequence. And then it has its defense mode. So if I tell my other 2 fighters to defend the archer, then when I shoot them and they come down to hit the archer, my warriors will jump in the way and hit them, as many of them that attack. So with defense properly played out, logically and smartly, you can attack 6 or 7 or 8 different enemies in one turn with the defense mode. It's actually really, really smart. Like, if you think about it, if you run at a bad guy and swing your weapon at him, right? That's your shot. That's what you just did. But if you're standing there waiting and 10 enemies come running at you, and you hack one, and then the next one comes up and you hack that one, and the next one comes up and you hack that one. You're doing that all in sequence, and it actually invites that type of scenario through its little defense mode. It is really cool. You can choose to defend yourself, or you can choose to defend another player, right? So players low on health, you're afraid that one more hit might kill them, you now can direct both of your other players to defend that player. And then once the turn comes around, they can heal magic or take a potion or eat a herb or, I don't know, whatever, eat a plate of turkey that fills in sword slashes on your body. Whatever it is they're doing to heal. So the game is extremely good. It really is one of the best, if not the best, 16-bit role-playing game out there. They did make a Dreamcast version of this game, and I'm pretty sure it has the music that's also the CD data disc music that can be added to the Sega Genesis version if you have a Sega CD. Originally, the game was just going to be a Sega CD, and they were probably doing the same thing I was doing when I was thinking about what type of Genesis game I'm going to make, only with the opposite result in my case, because I'm on the other end of time based on where they were. So back in the 90s, they were going, let's make a Sega CD, and they're like, oh yeah, so 10 people can buy our game because no one owns one. They're like, oh, well, let's make it into a cartridge. They start making it into a cartridge, and the system fails. It dies. And, like the last game, I think, was Frogger or something. And then this game got put on the shelf, on the back burner, and wasn't finished. Now me, I'm the opposite, because I know people have cartridges that easily emulate the Sega CD today. They have emulators that emulate the Sega CD, and they have PCs and phones and whatever that can actually emulate the Sega CD easily, and that the size of a CD is nothing with the size of files that people are using today. You play a video game that is 50 to 100 gigabytes of data. So a 200 to 800 megabyte CD is absolutely minuscule. It is nothing. So I can make a Sega CD and sell the ROM to people, and they can play it. Make the CD super cheap, and then they can buy that and play it on their real hardware, or buy it on some fake thing that will play Sega CDs. So for me, being on the opposite end of it, it is actually fiscally smarter to make a Sega CD game, because more people can play them today than they could back then. But back then, there were much fewer people that owned a Sega CD, and so it would have been automatically cutting your audience way down for who would want to buy your game. And making it a cartridge was a good idea. So the game is awesome. Like, it really is a cut above. Now, I put this on my Mega EverDrive, but because of the version of Mega EverDrive I have, I can't flash an 8 megabyte ROM on my Mega EverDrive. It's like a version 3 or something like that. So it won't do that. Okay, and then I have these blank cartridges by Chris, who does all the Mega EverDrives and all the EverDrives, to make cartridges. You have a flasher, you put the blank cartridge in, and you can just flash any game you want on there up to 4 megabytes. So I can't flash an 8 megabyte game onto one of those cartridges. So on real hardware, I can't play this, unless I play the Dreamcast version, right? But on this Legends Flashback, and also on the 2018 Flashback, the game works. Now, I'm thinking there's actually, on this one it's perfect. Like, this is actually exactly what it's supposed to look like and sound like. I'll go ahead and just go to a forest and start a fight real quick. Okay, so I went ahead and got to the place here. I'm sure I'll have a battle here in a moment. Pretty sure anyway. Maybe there aren't any bad guys here anymore. Here we go. Okay, now let's take a look at how this battle works. Well, I'll go ahead and do it this way. Now, I'm going to show you how this works. I'm going to have him defend her. I'm going to have her attack. I'll have her attack the little one, why not? And then I'll have him defend her. See? He just jumped in the way and hit that. So if I hit defend now on all of them, I'll just have them all defend themselves. It went to attack her, but he jumped in front of it and slashed it. Okay? So it's neat. It's a really neat mechanic. Especially when many enemies are attacking you all at once. You can set it up to where you'll hit a lot of them all at once. I love the drones. Okay, another thing that I've been working on is this Sega Genesis that I have. This was modified to be put into a Dynamo HS5 arcade cabinet, arcade machine that I have downstairs. It has now a multi-cart with, you know, like hundreds of arcade games, and it's really cool. It's called a Blue Elf 2. Not the greatest emulation ever, but it is good enough to play. And there are some things that I don't like about it, though. Sometimes it speeds through the loading screens or the beginning menus to get right into the beginning where you'll load coins. I don't like that. But briefly, we modified this system to be in that system and have RGB directly to the arcade monitor, and decided to take it out later to add the multi-cart. So originally it had a lot of wires coming out of it. It had like half a dozen wires coming out of it, and to make that work, we weren't really thinking, oh, we're going to use this system later for a regular Sega Genesis because it looks really great. There are reasons though to use CRT instead of an RGB monitor. Some of the effects in Sega Genesis games rely on the unique filtering of a CRT television. So you'll get some rainbow banding and some broken effects in certain Sega games, like Sonic, other games too, if you're using an RGB screen. So RGB is not really the best for Sega Genesis. A good, clean CRT is usually the best. Not something really fuzzy or freaky, but good. So now with this, so then we broke the edge here, and now if you look, you can actually see the work that's been done in here. Now, if you know what you're looking at, you see the little archway, kind of arch wires that have been just directly soldered to the board. and you can see the hole going out the back. That's where the power supply was. Now, to get this to work in an arcade machine, we had to pipe the 5-volt rail directly into the system through a wire that was soldered to the board. Right there, the red and white coming out, that's power and ground. That goes, that gets power from the voltage regulator when it has one. That's also been removed. Okay, so USB though is roughly 5 volts all the time. So a Sega Genesis can run off of USB power. So I removed all of the wires that were RGB, and of course we still kept the video out for the system in case we wanted to hook it up, in a different way, because you can actually get RCA converters for those cabinets. We were trying to think ahead, like if the the RGB didn't work right or whatever. It ended up being slightly dim. We had to raise the brightness a little bit on the arcade monitor to get it to work. Now, another mod we did to this that I wanted for the games in the arcade cabinet was we added a halt switch and the 14 megahertz. In essence, it's a processor speed doubling switch to the back. So we'll look at that. It's not the most beautiful mod because it didn't need to be. It was inside of an arcade cabinet. But that's right there. This is the halt switch. Kind of hard to see. And this is the 14 megahertz mod. So right now it's in 7 point whatever, 6.9 or whatever. Almost 8 megahertz. So what I did was I took out all the wires and then I put a USB 5-volt cable coming out of it, out of the other side. So this is what powers the system. So here we've got my Sega Genesis here. I've got my EverDrive. Back there is my retro scaler that will scale the graphics and smooth the graphics. Smooth graphics look really, really good on Sega Genesis. It looks like little hand-drawn cartoons. This is a mouse, by the way. This is a computer mouse that I got off Temu. So you can see the system is off. So I'm going to turn the system on. Notice how it did nothing. That's because it's not plugged in, but also because that power switch has been bypassed. That's because when I did this and converted it back, for whatever reason, the Z80 didn't want to turn on. And I thought I remembered the system being turned off and on by the power button on the arcade machine. So what I did was I went ahead and just made an extra connection to the Z80. So the Z80 is getting 5 volts as well, right as the system turns on. So the Z80 is always getting a clean, consistent 5 volts, and the system itself is getting a clean, consistent 5 volts. And anyone can do this mod. It's not complicated. You just remove the power connector or bypass the power connector. In fact, you could probably just solder the USB 5-volt cable directly to the 2 pins, the ground and the 5-volt output of your voltage regulator. And as long as you don't plug the system in with an AC adapter at the same time, you're going to be giving 5 volts through a USB cable to the system. So this would work relatively easily. It's a simple, very simple solder job for anybody. In fact, you might be able to use the cables to splice and not even have to solder anything, depending on the condition of the system, how many mods it's had. This one's heavily modded. Mod switch. Now, okay, Model 1 Sega Genesis systems actually have, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off, and I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. Here's how to plug it in and turn it on with this USB cable. So I've got my laptop here underneath it. It's hidden with camouflage though, so you guys might not even be able to see it. And over here's my USB port. Okay, I'm going to line it up with the system so we can see this magic happen in real time here. There we go. And there's my Sega with its EverDrive. So you can see this is a real Sega Genesis, real hardware. I've got my raised thumb pad 3-button controller. They did make these back in the day. This is a raised floating thumb pad. It's not the crappy flat thumb pads. And but most of them were the crappy flat ones. And this has the same model number as all of the Sega 3-button pads. So you're not going to be able to just like hunt a model number and go, oh, that's one of the raised thumb pads. You have to look really close. You have to look really, really close at the thumb pad to tell. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at a game being played on this USB-powered Model 1 Sega Genesis. Okay, the first game we're going to look at is Wolfenstein 3D. This is for the Sega Genesis. Okay, it says the Mega Drive version by GAS EGA 68K. Now this has smoothing on, so as you're looking at the graphics, everything has the 2x smoothing effect. This is a demo. Now the reason I chose this game first is to show what would have run on a 386 or 486 in its original time, which were computers that had hundreds of watts of power running them, much higher voltage usually than a 5-volt Sega Genesis. Now, of course, Sega Genesis AC adapters are like 9 or 10 or 12 volt, and then the voltage regulator brings it down to 5 volt DC, right? Direct current power. So this is, in effect, because of the USB cable, not using 12 or 10 or 9 or whatever. It's using 5 volts all the time. This is a Sega Genesis playing Wolfenstein 3D with no extra chips, no enhancements, nothing like that, with 5 volts of power. So if you imagine, people use 9-volt batteries, right, for guitar tuners and for pickups on guitars and for radios and CBs and walkie-talkies and whatever you have. A 9-volt battery that's running those things. That means that a little walkie-talkie is using more power to send a signal to another walkie-talkie than this system is using to run Wolfenstein 3D. And this is an excellent port of the game. It is, it's the game. It's, as far as I know, all episodes. I might be wrong. It runs fast and smooth. Very easy to play, 3 buttons. It's got all of the stuff. It's got, your speed, strafe, speed with strafe, shooting. The strafe button also opens doors. Somehow you can change guns and items and stuff. It's all there. It's got all the music, all the sound effects. It hasn't been sanitized. It has pictures of, Adolf, okay, and all the dogs and stuff, the blood. Now, before this, I would have said, hands down, that the best Wolfenstein 3D of all was the Jaguar cartridge version. Like almost no loading time, extremely fast, smooth, high resolution. But this is the best version because it's running on 5 volts on a Sega Genesis. And it's less than 2 megabytes. Okay, it's like 1,600K or something like that. This could be put on a cartridge easily with no extra chips or anything and run on anyone's Sega Genesis. Now I'll go ahead and change this to the non-smoothing mode so we can kind of get a look at what the game looks like without that added enhancement. Okay. This is the game without the scaler enhanced. So this is just piping it through with a relatively clean signal. If anybody's tried to use RCA on a modern HD TV, you know that it adds its own artifacting and its own cross-hatching kind of details. That's not happening here because this is a special device that sends the signal in as an HDMI signal. So there's none of that artifacting or cross-hatchy effects or anything where the resolution is trying to, you know, figure out why you're using 320 by 224 and freaking out, right? So now next, this is the 2X, which cleans the signal so that it is as raw as it can be going through TV. So this is actually a higher resolution so that it will look good, but not smooth. This is just the higher resolution. So this will look better on your HD TV. And as you can see, pixels are visible. Some people might prefer this because it's more retro. I like the smoothing. I used to not like it. Now I think the smoothing is amazing because it will make video game graphics look like hand-drawn artwork. And especially on these really high definition. This is a 4K television, so you know this can do very, very high, exceedingly high resolution. Okay, now I'll enable smoothing, and there immediately you can see all of the little edges are gone. Everything's smoothed out. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and load a different game. To do that, I just unplugged my USB port connector and plugged it right back in. A reset will work too though, so if you're just using a normal cartridge and not one of these SD card multi-cart loaders, then just hitting the white reset button will reset the system like this. I'm thinking, this is something I thought about because I watch Computer Booter. I often think that I'm in an alternate dimension variant of Earth, and that he's me if I would have stayed in California, for real. Like, he's so much like me the way I would have been if I never left the West Coast. And he's such an excellent person. He's like, I mean, he's very like balanced, almost Buddhist and calm, and he's also very loving and friendly and peaceful and kind, but he also works hard every day, all the time, and he fixes and modifies all game systems. Like sometimes you'll see him like take the shell off of an old nasty toilet Game Boy Advance and then put like clean it all up and put a passive, you know, TLT or TLF, one of those high dot matrix bright screens that are modern technology that will last forever and look good forever, and they're really bright. They use almost no power, and he'll put a translucent, awesome looking shell on it with better buttons and rejuvenate. Then he'll do that for a fee, and people are constantly mailing their systems to him and paying to have. He does something like a Frankie's, he calls, where he will Frankenstein parts of like a PS3 or another system and make it work again, where those things have burnt out and messed up or somehow aren't working anymore. And he influenced, when I watch his videos, you know, I don't know, it's like a cat, right? Like I had a cat where we would practice ninjutsu in the backyard, and we'd do rolls. Me and my wife and my kids would do rolling is a big part of ninjutsu and taijutsu training and stuff. And eventually, my cat would roll. No joke, hand to the Bible. My cat started rolling in the backyard. And that's how I feel when I watch Computer Booter. Like, I've watched him, and he's so good at what he's doing. He's got such a great method. And I'm not trying to say that I'm anywhere near that, right? like Venus to the sun, right? I'm just pretending, but it makes me work on stuff. I watch his videos and I go and I start working on all my stuff that's sitting around that needs soldered, because he's always soldering stuff. And I'm like, okay, I've got a pretty good soldering iron. I've got a solder sucker. I've got good solder. I've got a setup. But sometimes if I'm, you know, in the wrong mode, I will shake like a leaf and I just can't concentrate. But when I'm just right, I can solder smooth and do good work. And I've repaired a lot of things. Like as a father, I've repaired you know, so many little kid toys that got broken. I am a master of repairing toys. I will make a toy stronger than it was before it broke. So like if your G.I. Joe breaks, I will take a tiny nail and then drill with a super tiny drill bit a hole in both parts where it broke, cut the nail, and then glue the nail down into the hole, then glue that up into the other hole. So now you have a metal reinforced part on your toy that is not going to break, at least not in that spot. And I've done that so many times I can't even count or remember it. I've repaired toys and made them stronger. I dropped one of my favorite toys the other day. I had an Asuka figure. Asuka is how you pronounce it, I guess. And she's on a Junkion in motorcycle mode, and she fell off the motorcycle while I was carrying her, and her head fell right off. And it's a knockoff of like an old, awesome, you know, super articulated Asuka figure, inner plug suit and everything. And rather than get upset, you know, it was a little tiny bit upsetting, I went in my room and immediately drilled a hole in the place where her neck was, and then I found a screw, a tiny screw that had the exact same diameter as the ball joint that was on the top. I pulled the broken ball joint out because I already know, you know, you're not fixing one of those super tiny ball joints and they're not going to break again. So what I did was I replaced the ball joint with a screw that was the same shape, and then I glued it down into the neck hole. Now, and you can't see it because the part that broke off was the part that goes up into the head. Now she has a metal reinforced neck joint that is not going to break. It's not likely to break. So that's what I like to do when it comes to fixing stuff. Is I used to say to my kids too all the time, I love fixing things, but I hate it when they break, right? And I have old game systems and old computers that always need worked on, and so I'm always fixing things all the time. So I went ahead and fixed 2 custom-made 7800 controllers that needed fixed. I worked on those. I fixed my arcade machine. It wasn't working, and me and Nick went down there, my son, who's 11, and he helped me. We sat there and wrote down everything. I had him helping me through the entire process. And he helped me fix that cabinet. The left controller part wasn't working because one of the wires wasn't grounded or was hooked up to the wrong wire for being grounded. And we went through all of the stuff that it could be and eventually found that out and fixed it, so we have left player control now. I've also been working on my master system. I fixed this Sega Genesis, and what it made me want to do was start offering a modding and repair service for old game systems and old computers. Nothing past PS2, right? Like I could easily replace the eye on a PS2 or mod the PS2, but I can't, you know, like, wow, that didn't like going to demo mode. I can't go up to PS3 because I've never owned one and I don't really know like what to do with them. That just kind of pooped itself out there. Okay. This is a work in progress game that I downloaded. Like, check out that bass. I don't know if this will even work. It's the first time I've tried it on this cartridge. I have played it on both of the emulator systems, the Legends Flashback and the Sega Genesis 2018 Flashback, and my computers. It works on everything else. let's start it. Yeah, it just messed up. So it doesn't like it. It doesn't like the setup I've got here. There's a chance it won't even work on here. I am, you know, a guitarist and musician that programs 7800, 2600 and Sega Genesis and Sega CD, and I love old school 8-bit computers and 16-bit computers and just old computers in general. I also love mods for modern PC games and old PC games. I really love mods and customs and hacks and things like that. And I do a lot of work, so you know, it's all the time. Now this is play. I'm playing around right now, sure. Let's see here. I don't know why that wouldn't run though. And you can see that's only 1 megabyte. I think it could be that it is incompatible with the Model 1. Because sometimes when people mod these things, they go just beyond what the actual hardware can do. And so the way to test that very easily right now is to put this cartridge in a Model 1 that's not 5-volt USB and try the game out on a real Model 1. That will immediately say, oh, it's your 5-volt mod, or it will say, no, this isn't working on real hardware. Okay, now we have my unmodified Sega Genesis Model 1. I'm just going to let it run because it messed up on the demo and it messed up when I played, so let's see. Notice that my videos are kind of dark. I don't have anything, you know, to record with other than an HD camera. And it did the same thing. Yep. Right when it went to demo, it said, I can't do that. And this is an unmodified Model 1. Okay. This is through the Retro Duo. Better bass. Sounds more like a flashback. None of it sounds as good as on the flashbacks though. Those have the bass that's perfect. It just sounds really great. My computer does a pretty good job with it too. And it just messed up. Wow. Okay, so the Yoshi Sonic 2 does not work on real hardware or emulators that are perfect emulation of real hardware. And this is on my work computer. Which I also have a Sega 6-button controller hooked up to. Perfect bass. Let's start it. So if you're like me and you played this game and you're going to try to press down to charge for speed, that's not going to work because Yoshi doesn't have that power. So. Oh, I got the LSD. There we go. Okay. Woo. Oh, I hit one again. Best thing to do with those is to hit them with an egg so that you don't eat one. I forgot what to do here. I think you have to... No, it's... Okay. Didn't know if that worked. Okay, I'm shooting it. Now, in levels where you're playing with, I don't know if you can actually see the entire screen, I think you can. In levels where you're playing with Tails, there will be a baby Tails on his back as well. That thing's chasing after you. What if the acid chased after you, huh? Now, I can't verify, because I don't own one, if this works on a Model 2 or a Model 3 or whatever, but I can verify that this doesn't work on a Model 1, at least not on the multi-cart. Now, what I can do to take it one step further is actually flash this game to a cartridge, a flashable cartridge, and then test it and see if it has something to do with the working parts of a multi-cart that make it not work. So I guess there's a slim chance that something is going on here with a multi-cart, because this was all through my multi-cart and not emulated on an emulator like this is. This is using an emulator on a computer. So there is a chance if I flash this game to a cartridge that it will work. Now it says it's not finished. So this game I think is mostly finished but not completely finished. Okay? And honestly, whoever came up with this idea, you're a genius. I'm just going to say straight up. From one genius to another, you're a genius, okay? This is an incredible idea to make Yoshi protect baby Sonic. Oh God. This is not something that normal hackers and packers can do. This is not a, this is not a normal hacker-packer kind of thing. Oh God. I don't even know it just hit me. That's what it was. Something's up there knocking me down. Did it again. He's waiting up there for me, so I can't go on this one. So yeah, it plays great, looks amazing. It's got the effects. I kind of want to try flashing this to an actual cartridge to see if it will work because it really could be just how it's loaded on a one of those multi-carts that make it not work. Now what Yoshi does is he slows down instead of speeds up, like he's being careful. I like this better than Super Mario Brothers 2. There's just something about it. It's really great. It plays good and it's super cool. Also, I've noticed you have every coin pops out when you get hit. Crap. So pressing down puts them out. Pressing the gulp button again spits them out. Notice though, one component that I think a lot of us could have dealt without anyway is the crying. There's no crying. Sonic is not a crybaby like Mario. He just kind of takes it in stride. Like, okay, he ducks his head down, he covers his head a little bit, but he's not crying about it. When he falls, when he gets knocked off. So, download this and give it a try, if you can play it. No guarantees. And hopefully a finished version is out or will be out soon. I had considered that maybe they have the finished version, but they're kind of keeping it, maybe they're, trying to make money or something, somehow in a backwards way, like maybe making it like a Patreon download or something, like, something like that. I don't know how they would do that, since it's protected IP that's mishmashed together. But I'm not going to say that whoever did this doesn't deserve monetary compensation. But I will say that this is incomplete, and I don't know if there's a complete version of it. I guess I can do that. Crap. I got him. I guess I have to time it so I hit him. Yeah. that. There we go. Oh, he's escaping. Freedom bunnies, freedom birdies. There's squirrels on this one. Maybe it'd be fun if you could eat the animals like rah, rah. Incredible video game. Okay, this is what modding and homebrews and stuff. This is what it's about. This is what hacking and modding and stuff. This is what it's about. Is taking something that was already this good and then making it something that's just truly bodacious. Like this is unreal. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop now. Here we have Ghouls and Ghosts, Arturia Edition by Wolfric. Okay, this mods the game so that you are a armored female, like shield maiden warrior named Arturia. Not Arthur, Arturia. How about that? So I guess you could call her Tori if you wanted. And I think I might be wrong about this, but I think she might be slightly faster than Maximo, or whatever you want to call him, Arthur. I always thought his name was Maximo, but is that maybe from a later game? I don't know. Either way, this is awesome. Really beautiful. Just a simple graphic mod for the night, and I don't think anything else has changed in the game. I might be wrong. Alright, let's give it a whirl real quick. This is on my emulator still on my work computer. I thought there was a treasure chest there, but for whatever reason there isn't. There it is. love it. I love this game. Now someone was remaking it, and I thought I had a mod of it somewhere where they made it a bigger ROM, and they added all the missing added all the missing graphics. Oh, she's in a 90. First time I've seen that. Oh. So yeah, they added the missing graphics to make it essentially an arcade reproduction, you know, with the lower color palette. And I think that'd be pretty cool. I remember seeing it, but I thought I downloaded it, I don't know. Crap, I thought it was somewhere. Crap. Whoa, I don't know how I lived through that one. Crap. Phew. Craps. Here we have Superman Ultimate Edition. And I've never seen this. The first time I've seen it. 2023 by Billy Time. Now, this game was notoriously horrible. You know, basically, Superman games are cursed, right? Because he's invincible, and the only thing that can harm him is a super rare piece of his homeworld called kryptonite, and everybody knows that. This game, apparently, suddenly, all the bad guys that are endlessly coming at you are all somehow kryptonite enhanced and can kill you easily. So, it's like, you know, I don't know, it's like being told the specifications for an Abrams tank and then seeing a little kid shoot one with a slingshot and it explodes into a mushroom cloud, right? Like, it sucks. Like, you're Superman, but everything can kill you and there's nothing you can do about it. So what this guy did was tweaked the game and changed it around a little. I think several modifications have been made to the game. I think graphical modifications, but also and mostly gameplay and content modifications. The game is supposedly easier and funner and more Superman-y. Okay. I don't know though, honestly. I played the game and maybe played for 5 minutes and went, okay, I'm Superman and I'm getting killed by Walmart drones. You know, this guy's, of course I didn't say that back when I first played it. When I first played it I said, oh, this game sucks, move on to the next one. There's a reason that there are games that are the, you know, 99-cent rentals or rent one, get two rentals, stuff like that at the video game rental store, and it's because they suck. That looks cool. I'll give them that. That looks awesome. Oh, save the little kitties. When I downloaded this, the graphic that came with it, if I'm not mistaken, was from the newest Gun Superman movie, which, I don't know, people are hating on stuff. I loved it. I loved it. I've said this many times in my videos, I am not a critic. And if it's a colorful moving picture show with music, I'm probably going to like it. There are only a handful of movies in my whole life of nearly 50 years that I have not liked. And, you know, even when I was a kid, I wasn't a harsh critic of things, you know. This game, though, I didn't like. When it first came out, I thought it stunk. Okay, that's a man with a shark fin on his back, jumping out of the water into the sky and then raining down kryptonite sharks onto you, okay, which we know happened constantly in the comics and in the movies and cartoons and stuff, and that was a common threat for Superman, was kryptonite fish falling out of the sky on him. You know, that was the main problem, really, with his, you know, it wasn't, you know, super villains that were geniuses. It was men leaping into the sky from the ocean wearing shark fins on their back that summon and rain down kryptonite fish on you. Okay, that's his worst enemy. I also think the Supergirl movie is going to be totally awesome. And I've been waiting for Jason Momoa to be Lobo ever since I first saw his face in whatever he was in, right? Like, when I saw him as, Aquaman, I was like, why is Lobo Aquaman? Usually I'm against stereotypes being used in movies. It goes back to the thing that Dave Chappelle said. I'm gonna elaborate. So Dave Chappelle was talking about the, rich, corrupt black people who are ruining it for all the other up-and-comers who are African American or dark by descent. He said that there was this like curse thing where they would intentionally emasculate a black man by forcing him to dress like a woman in a dress, and that they wanted him to do that in a movie, right? And that in itself, of course, that you should be able to protest things that might make you uncomfortable or emasculate you, especially if you're primarily a comedian and secondarily an actor. But he did dress as a woman in a movie. He dressed as a woman in Men in Tights. When he played Achu, who was an African, I think, right? They had to disguise themselves to escape or something. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure in that movie he dresses up as a woman to escape the, Sheriff of Rottingham who says everything backwards, shit like that, right? But my point here is that actors are supposed to be these types of people who, they love pretending to be something, right? Like, Jack Nicholson is an asshole, right? Like everybody says, Jack Nicholson is like a major asshole who can't even be talked to, and he someone honked a horn at him once because he was like refusing to move at an intersection. So he got out with what must have been a priceless golf club and beat the person's car or something. He flipped out, super asshole mode, right, on the guy. And everyone said, no one was like, oh my God, can you believe Jack Nicholson did that? But in fact, they said, there goes Jack again. Like everyone knew he is a consummate. So is Jack Nicholson acting if he's in a movie playing the part of a major asshole? No, that's not a challenge for him. He's not an actor. He's being himself, right? If you hire a ex-military trained killer assassin sniper, right, who eats bugs and, hates children or some shit, and you have him play some monster assassin sniper in a movie, he's not acting. He is playing who he actually is, and that is not acting. Now, I'm not saying there isn't some acting involved. A camera's turned on and people get shaky and have sudden bowel movements and projectile vomit and sweat and shiver and stuff and all that. But, so there is that, that thing about camera recording and all, and people are different, right? But my point is, an actor who's a real actor who loves acting, they are supposed to want to pretend to be all kinds of things. So for a grown man who's muscular and masculine and alpha male and successful and smart and chiseled and chatty and all that, and then they say, oh, well, we have a role for you. We want you to play a beautiful maiden that's in distress. Oh, God, that's the greatest thing he could ever get to do. Because now he gets to be challenged. He gets to do something that is not fitting his stereotype. Okay? Actors aren't supposed to just go be stereotyped and be, the same thing in every movie all the time. That's something Hollywood does. That's not something that's really acting, though. If I pick you know, a guy who's always the same character because that's how they actually are in real life, that's not acting. They're just like not camera shy. They'll be themselves in front of a camera all the time. Maybe that's how Samuel L. Jackson is, who's, you know, in my favorite movies. I don't know. But I do know this. An actor shouldn't have problems pretending to be something. They should actually embrace that, right? So when an actor gets a chance, you get this nicest person in the world that collects kittens and you know, pays orphanages and, you know, prays and eats healthy and is a kind, beautiful, sunshiny person that smiles all the time. Then you have them play a screaming, mad drill sergeant who's murdered people with his bare hands and stuff. That is an acting job. A person who doesn't fit that stereotype in any way has to become something that they're not through the art of acting. Okay? And so, you know, I believe in that. I think that that's actually what they're supposed to be doing, is becoming the character that they're going to become, right? And, you know, Hollywood doesn't do that. Hollywood takes, you know, whatever. They take an actor and then they're barely an actor. They're just they find a stereotype, and then they have them be that stereotype over and over and over again. They typecast, and that's their method. But people shouldn't be, you know, bent out of shape about, you know, about things like that. So, and I'm not saying that that's how it is all the time. For all I know, Ben Affleck might be Batman in real life, you know, and I think he's one of the greatest Batmans that ever was. I also think that George Clooney was a magnificent Batman, and that Batman and Robin was a really, really great movie. I think people are way too critical, and they don't understand. They don't have an open enough mind or heart to be entertained by or to understand the angle that movie's taking. You know, perhaps if they knew that it was, you know, directed by a gay man, that's why there's butt shots and nipples. That it was someone who knew about the 60s Batman primarily, but then had the leftover materials from the Gothic reimagining of Batman to merge with it. And that's really what that movie is. It's the 60s Batman, if the 60s Batman was the Tim Burton Batman. And if you look at it from that angle, Schumacher did a magnificent job, because it was loaded with cheesy, funny, stupid jokes, and it had a great, like, you know, coating of silliness, but also it still managed to keep kind of that darker Gothic backdrop, you know. I loved Uma Thurman in the movie. I'll watch the movie just because Uma Thurman is so incredibly beautiful and awesome in that movie. She's just like amazing, you know. She's great in that movie. I like Pamela Isley. I think she is an incredibly awesome character. Like, she's really beautiful, but she's quaint and reserved and, you know, smart, but kind of apprehensive and a little shuddery, right? But then she becomes this, like, you know, she becomes an awesome force that can't be moved. She becomes her polar opposite, you know. Those kind of challenges are what actors are supposed to want to do, right? So I think that the new Supergirl movie is going to be awesome. But, you know, and by that rationale, perhaps Jason Momoa, I shouldn't be seeing him as Lobo right when I see him. But when you have him in the DC universe and he looks the way he does and you love Lobo as much as I do, the first time I saw him as, you know, Aquaman, I was like, he needs to be Lobo. He is so perfect as Lobo. He just, it's like, and it's one of those cases where, you know, it's okay to kind of go against that idea for that. I mean, they stereotype and typecast all the time in Hollywood, but in this particular case, he is a motorcycle enthusiast. He's probably part of some bike club. You know, he's strong. He looks like Lobo. He's like Lobo of our world. You know what I mean? So where Ben Affleck may as well just be the, you know, little boy trapped in a rich man's body with an armored suit and endless technology, and he's a kind of a genius detective, and, you know, he's compelled by higher reasonings, and all that just fits perfectly with his image and everything. That fits Ben Affleck so perfectly. He's just a great Batman. The same thing applies to Jason Momoa. He is like, so when I first saw that, I thought, even if this movie isn't the greatest thing that ever happened, Lobo, okay? And now that Lobo is out there, more Lobo. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, I haven't even seen the movie and I don't know anything about it, and I'm going to say more Lobo, more Lobo. There needs to be Lobo. They need to branch off and have just a Lobo, nothing but Lobo's Adventures 5-movie series where they're 2 hours apiece. There's so much good stuff. Like, they can bring in characters that have never even been thought of being in a movie because of the original parts that Lobo was in. Like the original comics he was in, he was around groups of people who you almost never see in any of the mainstream DC, right? So, in fact, he's like a bridge between all of those guys and those characters that are awesome, but they're left in the background. So he can bridge to that. Plus, he has such weird quirks. Like, he like loves space dolphins, and his children are hunting him down because he's like littered the universe with illegitimate children, and he can't be killed. Like, you know, he got sent to heaven, and he like beat up all of the gods in heaven, and they kicked him out. And then he got sent to hell, and they kicked him out. He can't be killed because the alternate powers, the heaven and hell worlds, won't allow him to be there because he's too dangerous. He's the last Zarnian, but, you know, kind of not, you know, because there's so many like half-breed Zarnians everywhere because he's been post-hole digging all over the galaxy. And he is really not a good or a bad guy. He's a chaotic, neutral, little more chaotic than neutral, but he's a skip tracer. I mean, he's a bounty hunter that is paid to find people, you know, and he's just a great character. He is my favorite DC character by and far, leaps and bounds, is and always will be Lobo, straight up. My favorite Marvel character is Spider-Gwen, okay? Like Gwen's alternate universe Gwen Stacy, where she becomes Spider-Woman. I love that. It's my favorite of all time. But my favorite DC has been, for most of my life, you know, after my mid-teenage years and older, because that's when I started reading Lobo comics, has been Lobo. With Lobo's back, Infanticide, Un-American Gladiators, everything they did with Lobo was just the best stuff. And they could really just, they could glide with that, I think. They should have a Lobo series like what they did with John Cena, with Jason Momoa, you know, and have it be on, you know, these streaming services, and just have like 150 episodes of nothing but insane adventures of Lobo, you know, call it the Insane Adventures of Lobo and the Space Dolphins or something. Anyway, this is a hacked up version of Mortal Kombat 2, where somebody enhanced the colors, added missing characters and stuff, changed it around to be better. As I'm looking at it, it looks better than the normal. And this is just the Genesis game. This isn't the 32X one. I can immediately tell it looks considerably better than the Sega Genesis game. So just that being said, it is way better looking. I don't know about how it plays, but I think they reintroduced, if I'm not mistaken, this version had brutalities, but I think the cartridge ones might have taken the brutalities out, and then somebody reintegrated them in the game. Better color, more characters, better looking graphics. Looks super good. I'm exhausted, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. Thanks for anybody who tolerated me this long, and thanks for anyone who purchased Yeet Fighter, however you purchased it, and thanks for all the comments, anybody who's watching my videos, and any kind of suggestions and stuff. I really appreciate the positive responses and some of the negative responses that I've gotten about my work. This is all me sitting in front of a computer in my room. Okay, so I'm doing my best, and you know, this is something I love to do, and I really hope to just make games that are just going to really turn people's heads, and I want them to have a great time playing these games. So, thanks for watching.